Okay, hello and welcome again. What I got here is a 4L60E. It's a 2006. The first digit is always on the General Motors is the year model. It's a 2006. The second digit is a C. So it's in a C body truck. It's probably a pickup truck or a Tahoe or a Suburban. And the HD, it's on one of those Tahoes or Suburban vehicles. So it's a 2006 C body 4L60E. We're going to do a tear down inspection on this, and the first thing that we need are tools. It's basic tools, 8, 10, 13, 15 millimeter sockets, little short extension, T50, and this is going to be a Torx Plus for the bell housing, to remove the bell housing bolts. We have our snap ring pliers for the snap ring that goes on the output shaft, some pliers to hold the servo cover, screwdriver, and then I have this long screwdriver with a notch at the end. That's to get inside the case and pull the snap ring from the center support. Low reverse piston spring, return spring compressor. And our little grinding tool here, I have a gasket remover pad on it. That's just to clean this shaft before you take the manual sensor position off or digital transmission range sensor off, and of course your cup of coffee. Alright, well, I'm going to go get me another cup of coffee and we'll start disassembling this unit. Okay, so let's go ahead and start tearing this unit down. The first thing we're going to do, we're going to take the O-ring for the turbine, for the lockup piston that goes in the converter. This is the input shaft or the turbine shaft. We'll remove that. Now we're going to remove all the pump or our bell housing bolts. Okay, so now that we remove the O-ring for the input shaft, the torque converter, clutch, seal, piston, O-ring, let's go ahead and remove the bolts for the bell housing. It's a T50 Torx Plus and a little extension so you can reach in there, especially this bolt right here. Okay, now that we have our bell housing out of the way, we're going to go ahead and remove everything that's on the outside of the unit, everything external. So now we're going to move to the manual lever position sensor. We remove these two 13 millimeter bolts. Now we're going to remove our linkage arm. And before we slide this transmission range sensor out from the transmission, we're going to clean the edges here. The reason for that is whenever you tighten up this linkage arm on it, it kind of flares the bottom of it. And when you try to take the range sensor from the shaft, you end up damaging the range sensor. When you go put it back in, the indicator lights will be floating all over the place. There we go, it slid right out. Slid out of the way. screwdriver and a hammer. Always bend it inwards so I can get my screwdriver behind it and get it out of the way. Now we're going to go ahead and remove our extension housing. Well, first let's remove our output speed sensor. Now if you're not familiar with your bolts, this bolt is shorter than the ones that go on the valve body. You're going to have about 7 bolts, 3, 6, like 9 bolts that look like this. They're a little longer. If you try to install one of those bolts from the valve body in here, you're going to end up breaking it. It's not going to bolt all the way in. So just to, as a preventive measure, just install this bolt where, you know, back on the extension housing. That way you won't mix it up with the rest of the bolts. Now let's remove the extension housing. Okay, we'll get the extension housing out of the way. Now for the connector, the wiring harness connector, you need a special tool to push it in. But we're going to do it by hand. We're going to try squeezing the tabs in and tap it lightly with the hammer. Just enough so that the tabs will go inside of the bore. There we go. We just push it in. Now we take our pump bolts, remove them, the 13mm socket. And this being an 06 model, it doesn't have a pump O-ring anymore. It has a molded pump seal. Once we get it out, I'll show that to you. I'm going to flip this thing sideways just a little bit. Push the servo in a little bit, get it loose. Get a screwdriver behind the snap ring. Go around and remove it. I'm going to use these pliers to lift it up. Get your 45-degree angle pick. This is what I use. And I usually don't tear that seal up. It's best if you just stretch it and pull on the cover, and it comes right up. If you rip the seal, sometimes it'll be real hard and brittle. It'll break in there. It'll make it more difficult to get it out because it's still going to be stuck on the snap ring groove. So this is the servo cover. This is our overdrive piston, servo piston. And this is our second piston. And this is like an intermediate cover that goes in between the second and the fourth. You got second inside the end cover and the second piston on the front. And this just separates the two. This is our return spring. Set it aside. Now that we got our servo removed, we're going to flip this thing over and remove our panel. See what it looks like. 13mm. Okay, yeah, we have a lot of clutch material and it smells pretty bad. See all that around the magnet? Looks like converter clutch. All these little crumbs all the way around. Have a lot of real fine metal on it. Let's go ahead and finish tearing this thing down and see what we're going to be able to find here. Okay, this is an 06 model. It doesn't have the input speed sensors. On 07 and up, they added a turbine speed sensor on the pump, and it goes wired right in here. Right next to the boost valve goes the wire, and it goes into the inside the stator support. Now we're going to go ahead and disconnect our wiring harness. This transmission is not too old, so the wiring harness is still flexible, in good shape. Now on earlier models, or if the transmission overheated, these clips here are just going to break off, and that's normal. I mean, they always do break. And this one's not too old, so they're coming apart in one piece. Okay, now we're going to take our D10 roller, set that aside. We're going to remove all our 10mm bolts. This is the 1-2 accumulator piston. Accumulator assembly. We're going to remove the piston. A little bit of air, and it comes out.
Excuse me, boss. You have a text message.
Now, it is very common that the piston will crack from where the pin goes. This is in very good shape. There's nothing wrong with it. We'll just replace the O-ring. That'll work. 1-2 accumulator housing. Always check it for scoring. It's a little polished, but that's okay. This is fine. This is a good 1-2 accumulator housing. It's not scored. It has a plastic piston. Whenever you have an aluminum piston, it's more prone to wear at that area. Let's go ahead and remove all of our bolts. Now we're going to remove the pressure switch manifold. See these bolts right here? These are longer than the output speed sensor bolt. If you install this bolt on the output speed sensor, it will not tighten, and you may think that it's not going all the way in. You will force it and you will break it. Now to remove this, always twist it, press and twist. The reason for that is that you have O-rings here on the pressure switches. Now they're full with gunk in there, all that black soot. They're gold in color, but when you pull it, the O-rings are stuck on the aluminum, and you will bring the pressure switch with you and you will destroy it. Okay, sorry about that distraction. Turn it off. Now we remove these 3 8mm bolts. And notice the position of these 3 bolts. And I'm going to show you why. You need to pay attention to where they go. They are longer. If you install this bolt here, you will cause a bind up. And the reason for that is because it's longer. It goes through the barrel of the case, and it will hold the sun shield stationary. So in other words, you will not have a reverse, and you will not have second, and you will not have fourth gear, and it will cause you a lot of problems. So pay attention where these 3 bolts go. One here, here, and here. Alright, let's move the wiring harness to the side and remove the valve body from the case. Alright, so we have 2 shift solenoids. We have a force motor or pressure control solenoid. We have the 3-2 downshift solenoid, and the torque converter clutch pulls width modulated solenoid. I'm going to take this cover off here. Same 3 bolts, same size, all the internal bolts, 8mm short bolts are the same. Have return 2 return springs. There's a valve in here. We're going to remove that. Always pull the pin a little bit out and then wiggle the forward accumulator. Same thing, inspect it for cracks or wear. And it's always recommended to replace this one with an aluminum one. On the older models, this is nice and white. If you see it dark yellow, it means that it's about to get destroyed or break. See another 8mm bolt. Remove the force motor, set it aside. There's 7 check balls on the valve body. They stayed in the case. Okay, this is the little manual valve rod. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And a very common issue is that this check ball here gets stuck in the separator plate, and it causes the band, the 2-4 band, to burn. So more than likely, we're going to find that the band for second and fourth is going to be damaged. We'll remove the check balls. So it's 6 in total here on the valve body. You install them on the valve body and then on the case. 3 more 8mm bolts. Remove the spacer plate from the transmission. There's that check ball. See, it almost went through the other side of the spacer plate. Just going to push it. There we have it. Now this spacer plate like this, it's damaged, but there is a fix for it. They sell little fixes for the check ball to fix the plate. We're going to go through that later. Set it aside. This is the 3-4 accumulator return spring. We're going to remove the 3-4 accumulator piston. There's a 3-4 accumulator piston. It's aluminum. Always with the same pin. Just check it for wear, wiggle it. This is nice and tight. If it wiggles all over the place, replace the accumulator piston. Okay, let's remove our torque converter clutch solenoid. This is an on-off solenoid. And we remove it. It's part of the wiring harness. And now we remove the complete wiring harness. Set it aside. And there's another check ball here in the case. Right here. We're going to go ahead and remove that. You have 8 check balls altogether. You have 1 check ball captured in a little capsule. it doesn't come out. And then you have a third release check ball capsule here, and it doesn't come out. All right, well, let's remove our pump from the case. Flip this thing over so you can see it. And always inspect the inside of the stator support. The bushings, this bushing is white. If you see there, it's kind of chrome. This is a Babbitt material bushing. You see that in the front as well. There's bushings. When you see this type of bushings on your transmissions, always install brass bushings in it. These bushings are no good. They wear out fairly quickly, and it ends up damaging the stator support and the input shaft. It is very important to replace all these bushings. As a matter of fact, I have another video just showing the wear that the bushings create. Okay? Unanchor the band from the band anchor plug, and then just pull on the drum. Here we see the reverse input drum. Reverse input is in the inside, and second and fourth gear, this band applies here. And as you can see, this band is burnt, it's black. You can see some cracks here. There's some pieces missing here on the band. I don't know if you can see that. Well, there you go. And then I'll stretch it here a little bit larger. Okay. We're just going to remove the assemblies first, and then we're going to disassemble the sub-assemblies. Here is the output shaft, and here is a snap ring. We're going to go ahead and use our snap ring pliers, and we remove that snap ring. We remove our front planet assembly. Always wiggle it. Make sure it doesn't wiggle around. If it does, it needs to be replaced. It does have some bat wing washers. Just make sure that they are installed and they look in perfect health. Always kind of put pressure on the capture bearing. This bearing cannot be replaced unless you disassemble the whole planet. Make sure it's not damaged. When it's damaged, you'll know everything's going to be torn up. This is the ring gear for the planetary carrier. There's nothing wrong with the planet, so there should be nothing wrong with our carrier as well. Set that to the side. Here's another bearing. This bearing goes here. This is our sun gear shell. This plastic washer goes on top of the center support. This is a high rate failure on this unit. This sun shield looks good. It doesn't look worn out. But believe me, replace it. Do not reuse this sun shield because it's going to come back. They strip from here and they break from here. So even though it looks good, this is trash. We cannot use that. Reverse sun gear. Now here's the fun part. We're going to use this screwdriver with the little notch. I'm going to get this closer to the camera so you can see the notch. Put my glove behind it. Yeah, there you go. Yep. So you're going to use that notch to grab the snap ring, and then you're going to pull. You're going to grab and pull. Sometimes it becomes a little difficult. You just need to get behind it. There it is coming out. I don't know if you can see it there. It's partially out. I'm just going to get behind it with my fingers and remove it. Okay, now we're going to wiggle the output shaft to get the rear planet out. There we go. And now we pull on it. Here we have our output shaft. This is our center support. Low reverse one-way clutch or roller assembly. Always check the race. If the race is a little worn, your low reverse clutch is worn and it needs to be replaced. Low reverse clutches, and they are also burnt. They're burnt up. Rear planet assembly, same thing here. Wiggle the pinions. They should not have any side play or cock sideways. If they do, replace it even though it looks good. And if it does cock sideways, you got to replace it. Put it to the side. Low reverse cushion plate or wavy. Put that to the side. Rear planet ring gear or carrier assembly, two bearings. Center support, this is an anti-clunk spring. Whenever you go from second to first gear, if this is not installed, the gear train in the back or the center support will slap and it'll give you a clunk going down into first. And you will hear the clunk. This is an anti-clunk spring. It's like a cushion spring. Okay, now we're gonna drain a little bit our fluid here. We want to get that low reverse piston out of the bottom of the case. We're going to use that tool here. I'm going to use this sun shield as support so that I can find the edge of the snap ring and then install it. Bear with me just a little bit. I'll get the camera over on that side. Okay. So here it is installed, and the openings of the snap ring are right here. There's one opening here and one opening right there. Okay. We use the same pliers. Get a comfortable position that you can get in there. Get the edges. Let me get my little hand flashlight out here so that we can see better. You can see, I can see. We get the snap ring out of here. I need to go further in. I have to wiggle this. Okay. There we go. Let's get it out of there. Here we come. Get one side out. Here we go. There we have it. Remove our tool. Make sure the return spring doesn't get caught up in the snap ring groove. Get it out. Now, in order for this piston to come out, we're going to blow air through the feed hole, but we need to remove this bracket here that holds the parking rod and the parking pawl, and we want to do that so that the parking pawl will flip to the outside. And we reinstall this bracket and just thread one bolt, just partially thread it. That'll give some room for the piston to slide out once we blow it out. Okay, so we're going to blow some air through the feed hole and it's going to pop right out. Here we have it. Okay, so everything from the barrel of the case is removed. Now let's go ahead and disassemble our drums. Okay. Reverse input frictions. You need two components for reverse. The low reverse are burn up, and these are the reverse input. What that does, it gives a reverse reaction. You have two components of both opposite ends holding together, and the planetary gear system starts spinning on the opposite direction. These are in very good shape. They're not burned, only the low reverse friction. Here we have our input bearing. And this spacer here is selectable. This is number 69, the very most common one. And this is to adjust the input clearance on the input shaft. 5 to 32 or $36 is acceptable on the clearance. Okay, we see that our third clutch is. Okay, let's continue here. 3/4 snap ring, just remove the pressure plate. 3/4 clutches are smoked, man. Look at that. Okay, so we're going to need the backing plate. We're going to need the pressure plate. And the steel plates for third clutch. Go ahead and remove our forward clutch assembly. Two coast clutches. They're in fair shape. They have a little black mark on it. Slipped a little bit. Forward clutch assembly, first gear. They're in perfect good health. They come in the kit, so we're going to go ahead and replace it. We're going to check our input sprag assembly. Now before I disassemble this, I'm holding the sun gear. And the outer race is going to turn counterclockwise. And the inner race, I'm holding it because it's attached to the sun gear. But if I hold the outer race, the inner race is going to turn clockwise. Clockwise, counterclockwise. It depends on how you hold it. Always hold the center and spin my outer race counterclockwise. Let's go ahead and disassemble it. Always check it here for any signs of wear, pitting. Perfectly good. If one race is bad, the other race is going to be bad. So if one race is good, the other race is going to be good, and the sprag is going to be good. You can go as technical as to checking the wear, and over 30 thousandths. I mean, you measure it over 30 thousand wear on the shiny part. You need to replace it. And this sprag looks in very good shape. Set that to the side. Let's disassemble our pump assembly. Okay. Always check that the rotor does not score where it rides, on its working area. Remember the Babbitt bushings, they got to go. Install brass bushings, and I mean inside here it's in perfect good shape. You will see some scoring marks in it. This is nice and smooth because the bushing is not completely gone. So if you want to see the damage on this Babbitt bushings, you can go to the other video that I have and why it's important to replace the bushings, and you will see this exact same unit. Well, not this unit, right, but another 4L60E that had that same issue with the input shaft and the stator support being damaged. Okay, now let's remove the rotor from the pump. you want to inspect the ends of the vanes and where the rings ride. Sometimes you will see some cuts on the sides where the expander rings will just wear them out. It's not the issue here. They're in very good shape. Let's check the slide. The slide with time it'll turn shiny and white. This still has a little smoky color to it, which means that it's almost not new, but it's not wore out. You will see some shiny ones out there, but just check it, make sure that it's not scored. You don't see no lines, you don't see no pits. If you do, you have to replace it. It's got to go. Okay, so this is our tear down for a 4L60E. Check this drum for warpage with a straight edge, and they do warp. I don't know what I did with mine, but you get the point. Just put a straight edge here, put your flashlight in the back, and if you see some light shining through, replace it. Let me see what I can find to show you. Okay, this might not be the straightest tool, but we're going to go ahead and use it here. You put your light behind it, and if you see light coming out, I don't see any light, do you? If you see some light passing through there, then your drum is warped, and you need to replace it. Okay, so here we conclude the teardown inspection of this 4L60E 2006 on a C-body Suburban. It could be Suburban, it could be a Tahoe, it could be a pickup truck. It's a 2006 model. 3/4 clutches are smoked. The 2/4 band is burnt. The spacer plate, the check ball was stuck in it. Needs a complete overhaul kit, a sun shell, all the bushings. Spacer plate we're going to fix. I'll show you how. And that's it. Let's go ahead and put this thing in the cooker, clean it up, and after we clean it up, let's assemble it. All right? Okay, so now that we have our transmission disassembled, we need to clean it up. This is the parts washer. It uses hot water and a special fluid that Alumacast or something like that is called. And it's biodegradable. It's used to clean the aluminum or the cases. You can clean your hard parts in here too. I do not recommend that you clean your planetary gears in here because the soap will get inside the pinions. But anything else, drums, steel plates, carriers, planetary carriers, and all that, you can wash it in here, except where you have valves, like the pump cover has 2 valves, the pressure regulator and the lockup valve, and the valve body. Don't wash them in here, wash them in the solvent, and you will have real good success. Okay, I'm not going to go through all the cleaning process. I'm just going to clean it up, come back, and start assembling. So here we have it. This is ready for the wash. We just close it, turn it on. Okay, so here we have all of our parts, most of our parts cleaned up. And we're going to build it by sections, so we're going to do the rear first all the way to the center support. Then we're going to rebuild another drum, and then another drum. We're going to take it by sections. And the first thing we're going to do is the steel plates and this drum, where the drum rides. We are going to use a gasket remover wafer pad, and we are going to resurface it just like you would normally do your brakes. And if you see, I mean, it's perfectly in good condition, but it's a little crystallized, and you want to take that off. Here's our kit. There's our sun shell, our steels with both of the covers. Here is the 2/4 band, our filter, all of our frictions. And if you notice here, I already have the low reverse frictions soaking. You soak them for about 5 to 10 minutes, and just to make sure that you don't run them dry. These are our lip seals. This is our kit, our overhaul kit, our lip seals, the two O-rings for the servo, accumulator D-rings, small O-rings for the wiring harness and solenoids. And this is a spring for the overdrive servo return spring. And this gets stretched out and it collapses, the original one, so the kit comes with one. Here's all of our sealing rings. More small parts for the input drum. The filler tube boot. This kit comes with both O-rings, with the regular O-ring, early style O-ring, and with the late model O-ring molded. You see here, that's what we have. There's the old one over there on the basket. Basically, it comes with everything. It comes with a couple of seals too that are not needed. This is a late model extension housing seal, and this is a Corvette seal. Front seal, regular extension housing seal. We got all the bushings here, and we got all the bushing drivers for the different bushings. So like I said, I mean, the first thing we're gonna do, we're gonna resurface all of our steels, the ones that are good, even the ones that are new, we're gonna resurface them, and then after that, we're gonna go ahead and start installing all of our bushings, and then we're gonna start assembling the sub-assemblies, and then installing the sub-assemblies in the barrel of the case. And then after that, it's the valve body. Oh, and we're going to install a transgo shift kit on this thing too. Okay, so I guess I'm going to go ahead and remove all the bushings, and then when we get back, we go to the bushing installations, and I'll show you the resurfacing of the rest of the steels. Okay, we're going to remove the case bushing with our bushing driver. There, went all the way down to the floor. And this is our new case bushing. And you want to be just below flush on the opposite end, inside of the barrel of the case. You go ahead and flip this over. I don't think you can be able to see that, but there it is, installed already. Okay, so I already pre-lubed the bottom of the case. Already installed the three rings, the O-rings there, or they're actually square cut or leaf cut rings. We're going to install, there is a position, see this notch right here? It goes to the 9 o'clock position, and you just drop it in there, and there we go. And you can push it in, but since I got the camera here too close to me, I'm gonna just with the output shaft, I'm just gonna tap it in. There we go, we are bottomed out. Now we put our return spring. Get our spring compressor on top of the return spring. And the spring compressor is going to latch at the snap ring groove for the center support. And you just guide it in. I have this real long screwdriver, flathead screwdriver, just to kind of make sure that your return spring does not catches the snap ring groove, and that you go all the way down. I'm going to back up just a little bit here so that I can get my hand in there. And it's a little tricky here, but you want to latch one end and then I know that my hand's on the way and you can't see that. But on the opposite end, I'm going to grab it with my screwdriver. Latch one end. Okay, I got this end latched in. Just hold it with your finger. There we go. We're in. Okay. Take your tool, remove your tool. Just make sure that your snap ring is all the way latched. We are. I already pre-lubed the bushing. Now we're going to install our rear planet ring gear, and our bearing is installed on the ring gear. Drop that in there. Our rear planet with the bearing. I'm going to go ahead and drop that in there. Make sure your spline's on the planetary carrier. There we go. Now our low reverse clutches, they are pre-soaked, and as you see the steel plate here, that gasket removal tool does not, that wafer does not remove metal. It just gives it a couple of nice grooves there for lubrication. And we install our wavy first, steel plate, clutch, another steel, another clutch, steel, clutch, steel, clutch, steel, and another clutch. Then we're going to put a dab of assembly lube on the anti-clunk spring, and it's going to go at the 5 o'clock position. Going to get our center support. This wide opening here goes to the like the 3 to 4 o'clock position. Kind of guide it in there. Okay, washer came undone there. I'm gonna push it down with my hammer here. Uh-oh. There we go. There we go. Now we're going to rotate the low reverse race, and then latch it to the low reverse planetary and push it down. Okay, now we install our snap ring. Now this is the way I install my snap ring. Here we have the anti-clunk spring. I always make sure that my openings are clear from that and not on top of it, because if it is, your snap ring might pop out. You don't want that to happen. See how it is on top of it? I just get on the opposite direction and then twist the snap ring a little bit, and there we go. Okay? So now our low reverse sun gear, sun shell, and our front planetary gear assembly. Okay, so let's install our bushings. We're going to start with the small items. I'm going to use my shop press here. Go down on it. I like to use the shop press. You can smack it in like I did the case bushing, but when you use the shop press, they go in pretty straight. Like butter. There we go. So that's one. Now we're gonna flip it over and we're going to install this one. Same thing. Kind of have it a little flush there. Slowly get it level. Just below flush a little bit. Okay, so we got that one in. Set that one to the side. Install this little ones. Well, with this one we need to go lower, so we'll install those when we install the stator ones. Now let's install the sun gear bushing. Going a long way down. Here we go. Kind of check the depth, see where you at. We're right at flush. Supposed to be like in between, like in the middle. Check it again, get it out. That is perfect. Okay, now we're going to install the drum, the reverse drum bushing, which is the rear bushing. Make sure that it's centered. Okay. Now we're going to install the rear bushing. I don't have a size for that, so I'm going to use this larger one, oversized, and use that instead. There we go. Brand new bushings. We're gonna well, let's go ahead and install the pump bushing. Okay, here it is. Long ways down. Use the other pad. Get there quicker. So much easier. They going straight, have no issues. You can actually control how far you want to go down. You want to be flush with that step here, and it has a stop at the opposite end. That's our pump bushing. Now we're going to lower it one. We're going to do our stator bushings, front and rear. The front one, we don't need a driver. Front stator bushing. Just make sure that it's all the way in. This is not the one. Okay, it is all the way down. Let's install the opposite end bushing. And for this one we do need a driver. just below flush. And now the little ones for the sun gear. We're going to use this installer tool here. Went too far up. Here we go again. Another try over here. Get me a little closer. Well, I'm almost all the way down. Okay, went a little bit too far down, so I kind of went up with the setup here. Let me get another one. Already got it flush. Now we're gonna go down below. All right, let's get this thing centered here. Slowly. There we go. Right below flush. Let's see where we're at. Okay, right below flush. Let's go ahead and install the other one. Where's it at? Oh, where'd that little sucker go? Well, I had both of them here. I don't know where the other one went. I'll go look for another one. You can also install your seals here at the press. I had already installed the extension housing bushing. Now we're going to do the front seal. See if we can go, how far high can we go here? Okay. Same thing here. There we have it. Front seal, bushings, everything on the shop press. Nice and straight, nice and even. There we have it. You can also install your seals here at the press. I had already installed the extension housing bushing. Now we're going to do the front seal. See if we can go, how far high can we go here? Okay. Same thing here. There we have it. Front seal, bushings, everything on the shop press. Nice and straight, nice and even. There we have it. Okay, well, let's continue having fun here. Next is going to be our sun gear with our brand new bushing. Our 4-tap plastic washer is already on there. And going to be our sun gear shell. Okay, after the sun shell, front planet ring gear, the front planet, and the output shaft. And we install our new snap ring. long screwdriver here, make it easier. Okay, so now we have the rear of the transmission assembled. We have the low reverse frictions, the low reverse piston, center support, rear planetary gear assembly, front planetary gear assembly. Now we are ready to assemble our drums. Okay, so we're now going to assemble the reverse input drum. And first thing we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and lube where the lip seal rides. Lube it up real good. And we're going to install our lip seals. The piston goes into the drum this way, and the lip should go down like that. When the drum fills with fluid, it expands and it pushes the piston and compresses the frictions, the clutch pack. Now we install the inner lip seal in the same manner with the lip going down. We lubricate it, put some assembly lube on it. Then we drop it in the drum. We use a lip seal installer. We work it around and around until we get the lips into the bore where the piston rides. Okay, so here we have it. I'm going to go ahead and install our return spring on our foot press, and I need to go get the snap ring. Okay, so I got the camera a little bit closer. We are going to install our snap ring, which I have here in my hand. Compress it in the foot press. There we go. Now we are going to install our frictions. Okay, we start with the cushion spring, steel, friction, steel, friction, steel, friction, steel. We end up with the friction and the pressure plate. And our snap ring. And then we have our reverse input drum already assembled, and with some emery cloth I sanded it in the same way that it rotates inside the transmission, this way. So here we have our reverse input drum already assembled. We lube our bushings up and it's ready for installation. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do here, we're going to assemble the input drum. I'm going to remove the an O-ring that it has in here, the green O-ring. So once we discarded the O-ring, we're going to install a new one, which is this one. And then we're going to install the seal that seals the front loop to the rear loop circuit. We install that. We lubricate where the third clutch molded piston is going to go. Lubricate the round O-ring and all the surfaces where the inner lip seals for the molded pistons are going to, or their working area. So here you see that I lubricated those areas in there. Now we install the third clutch molded piston. Now this we're going to install it as an assembly. So we're going to install the forward piston first on the forward piston housing. Install it as an assembly. We're going to use our tool here for the inner lip seal. We guide it in there. We don't let it fall. Hold it with one finger. You hold that crown with one finger, one of the legs. I'm holding it with my left thumb, and then we just guide the piston in there. And here we have the forward molded piston and piston housing and the third clutch crown there that compresses the third frictions. Now we install the forward piston, forward clutch piston, our return spring. We get our foot press here ready to compress. Now we install our snap ring. Okay. Okay, so there we have it. Now we're going to get this to the side as we had it. And we're going to begin with the stack up. So we put this bearing here. Now we assemble our forward sprag assembly. We put one of the races in. We get the sprag assembly on the inner race, and we put it in the position where it's supposed to rotate. I hold the inner, and then the outer is supposed to work counterclockwise. And this is the way I installed it. Rotate it, push it in. Inner sun gear, hold, counterclockwise. The other sprag guide, put it in here. Remove the snap ring. Install our coast clutch hub. Hold the sun gear counterclockwise. Now we're going to install our frictions. Install one coast clutch steel plate, one friction, another steel plate, another friction, the pressure plate for the coast clutch. Now this is the wavy plate for the forward clutch. Install our sprag assembly into the drum. It should sit right on top of that bearing. Steel plate, the friction, another steel plate, another friction, steel, friction steel. It takes 5 frictions for the forward clutch. And I just noticed on the kit, I received 4L65 frictions for the 3rd and 4th clutch. And I'm working on the 4L60E. The difference is that the 4L65s are thinner. This is a 2006 model. 2007 and up, you got 4L60 and 4L65. Now the frictions are real thin. I had some, this is the 7th friction. Came with 7, they're thin. I had some coiling, 2 different sizes. Steels, these are for racing. It's not going to affect anything. I mean, it's only we're only going to use it to add that extra friction just in case we need it. We're going to go ahead and do the stack up here and try to adjust accordingly. The way I like my pressure plate is to be right flush with the snap ring groove, and we're going to try to accomplish that. This is the 6th friction, and it's a thin friction. Now we're going to install our pressure plate to see how low it is. And yes, it's a little low. I'm going to install a thin, well, I have a thin regular steel here. I'm going to install the 7th friction and see where we're at. If we're too high, which we are too high, we're above the snap ring groove. I'm going to get one of the thin coiling steels, remove one of the thick steels. This is a thin one. Install it, and that should bring my clearance a little bit low. And we are at flush. That's what we want to accomplish. We want to be flush with the snap. Okay, so here we have it with the snap ring already installed. And I know the frictions are wet. It's kind of hard to rotate, but they should rotate freely. If you were stacking this drum dry, they will be floating there all over the place. And that's the way, that's what we're looking for. It was right at the snap ring groove. If I take the snap ring off, I got the camera on one hand, but I took it off the tripod. I'm going to see if I can get the snap ring off. It might pop out, which is no big deal. It's only me and you here. But if you see here, we're right at the groove. We're a little bit above. I'm going to see if I can get another thin steel plate and retry. Let's see here. Remove the pressure plate. This is the regular thin steel. Now we have the thin coiling, which is a black in natural color. And then we have, this is a regular thick steel. We'll put that to the side. And we get, actually this is another thick coiling. Okay, we have a thin one here. Now let's see what we're going to be able to accomplish here. Let's do the stack up again. And we want to be right at flush. And if it's below flush, that is not a hell of a lot. Now let's get a little closer here. We're flush, man. We are flush, a little below, but that's the perfect clearance that I use all the time. You can get your specifications, you can get the book out if you want to, but this is perfect for me. And it works perfect. You have a lot of free slack and nice clearance. It's about maybe 35, I think 65 clearance will be perfect for this. But always leave the pressure plate at flush with the snap ring groove, and you still have a lot of play there to play with. I don't like it too tight because then it'll drag on a kick down, and with time they will get burned up. Okay, so now we're going to install our ceiling rings. We're going to remove the old ones. I'm just using a regular pick to rip them off. Here we get them off. The old ceiling rings. We're going to use an expander tool. We're going to expand the ceiling rings. And a resizer. This is as far as it goes because it's a large shaft. On the earlier models it goes all the way down. You just slide your ceiling ring. Then you position it on the first groove. Kind of work it in the groove. Kind of like that, you know, a little bit centered. Then you get your resizer and carefully slide it in there. And that should resize your ceiling rings. Now we're going to put our spacer and our bearing. And we're going to use our stator just to try it in. Put a little bit of assembly lube on the ceiling ring. It's already been resized. We just want to make sure that it's sized correctly. There we go. That's one. You got 3 more to go. Same thing. Put our resizer, our expander tool to expand the ceiling ring. Work it in the groove. It expands it quite a bit. It gets quite large. Got to work it in the groove, and then get your resizer. Carefully make sure that it's in the groove. Doesn't go outside the groove. If it does go outside the groove, you may damage the ceiling ring. Same thing. Resize it. To the next one. Here you see the groove. Kind of work it. See how it is very enlarged. You kind of work it inside the groove. Make sure that it's inside the groove. And then resize it. You got to go around. See how this is real expanded. Work it inside the groove. You should slide down. There we go. If you feel that it stops, you got to position the ceiling ring inside the groove. Our fourth one. Work it in the groove all the way around. Get your resizer. Make sure that it's inside the groove. Slide our stator. And there it is. Resized. Now that it's been resized, go ahead and lube it up. Reinstall our stator. Now we put the reverse input drum on top of the input drum until it's all the way down. You can feel it solid. Now we can install it inside of the barrel of the case. You wiggle it. And the way you want to wiggle it is because you want those clutches to engage on the front planetary gear assembly. It's all the way down. The reverse input drum sits on top of the sun shell. and you should have the input drum free like this. It should come up and down. That tells you that your drum is all the way bottomed out. Now that we had our band soaking with fluid, you go ahead and install it. Drop it down a little bit. Then get your screwdriver, and this piece right here, this you're gonna anchor it on the band anchor plug. And make sure that it is latched in on the band anchor plug. There we go. Now the next thing is the pump. Then from the pump we move to the servo, and then our valve body. Okay, let's go to see that our band is latched on our band anchor plug. That's our band. The servo goes in here and he breaks the reverse input drum, and when he breaks the drum, it stops the drum from spinning. You have second and fourth gear application through the band, and the inside of the frictions are the reverse input frictions. So it's reverse input and 2/4 on the outside. Okay, so now let's move on to the next great big thing. Okay, now we're going to work on the valve body. There's a couple of valves that you need to pay attention. They do get hung up, not very often. You got the accumulator valve. I already have all the valves out, not all of them, but most of the valves that you need to pay attention to. We have the TCC isolator valve here. We have the 3/4 upshift or overdrive valve train here. The 3/2 downshift, this spring likes to break, always check it. This is our accumulator valve and plunger. This likes to get stuck. There's our spring here. And our 2 shift solenoid valve trains. This is the TCC valve that goes inside the pump. This is the pressure regulator valve that goes inside the pump as well. A pump filter, the boost valve, always check that it's nice and free, and always go back with it nice and clean. So that's what we need to be worrying about this on this valve body here. Now on the isolator valve, let's go ahead and start lubing everything so we can start assembling our valve body here. Okay. Now I want to show you one thing here. This is off of a Transgo shift kit. This is the TCC isolator valve. Now we're not going to install the shift kit in this one, but I'm going to just show you something for comparison. The TCC isolator valve with the spring. This is the Transgo one. This is the original TCC isolator valve and the spring. On the early models, on the kit is supplied with a spring, TCC isolator spring, to eliminate the P1870 transmission component slipping trouble code. Now what we're going to do here, we're going to install this valve exactly like this. And how are we going to accomplish that? Well, it's very simple. We're going to flip this valve like this. We're going to install the spring first, then this plunger, and then this valve last. And if you look at it, I mean, it is, well, the spring fell. But if you look at both valves like this, here's the spring, and let me pick up the spring. We are actually creating the same setup here by doing this. And this is going to take care of the 1870 trouble code, P1870, transmission component slipping. Normally the TCC isolator valve gets worn up and gets hung up, and it gives you the P1870. And it goes right in here. Install our end plug and our clip. Now, in order to do this setup here, we're going to have to enlarge two holes here on the separator plate, just like they show you on the shift kit. 96 thousandths of an inch. I have a 92 thousandths drill bit. That's what we're going to use. We're going to enlarge this hole, and we're going to enlarge this hole. These two holes. This is for the TCC isolator valve, and this is for the 3-2 downshift valve. No, this is for the actuator feed limit valve. Okay, so we're gonna enlarge these two holes for 92 thousandths of an inch. So here we have that. Now let's go ahead and install our 3-4 upshift valve. This is a steel valve, and sometimes the steel valves get more hung up than the valves that are made from anodized aluminum. Drop them in the bore. I think the spring didn't go all the way in. Let's check this in here right quick. Okay. You went a little bit sideways. It's two sizes, so it has to go fairly straight all the way down. Get it up a little bit. And redo it again. There we go. Push it a little bit. There we go. The valve is two sizes, so you got a little bit hung up there. Caught sideways a little bit. All right. Now for the other valve. Now this one here, you just got to be careful which way you put it. You install it. If you put it backwards, you're not going to have no 3-4 upshift. We move it up a little bit. Remember, this is a steel valve, and you just want to work that valve here. See how it floats? If you feel dragging, you know what to do. Get your bench buddy and work that bore. Now we're going to install our end plug. And our clip. So there we have our 3-4 upshift valve. Nice and free. The TCC isolator valve. This is the actuator feed limit valve. And now we're going to install the accumulator valve. And on the shift kit, it asks you for some letter markings. This is a DX, and then you match the spring that comes in the shift kit for your servo. But we're not installing the shift kit on this one, so we're going to assemble it as it came in. Okay, there we have that. And now our shift solenoid valves. This is a free floating valve. There it went all the way down to the bore. You just want to make sure that these valves are perfectly free. This is what makes the transmission shift, and it is very important. Now we're going to change the O-rings on our solenoids. On this kit, it comes with green O-rings instead of black for easy identification. Now we install our clip. Now this shift solenoid valve has a spring, which makes it a little bit more difficult for it to get hung up. The free floating valves are easier to get stuck inside their bores if there's any metal contamination in the unit. And as if you remember the way the pan looked on this one, it was contaminated. This will prevent a lot of issues. Now we're going to install the 3-2 downshift valve. Okay. And the 3-2 downshift solenoid is the white in color or the bone color, and this one actually turns yellow or orange with age. Got 2 O-rings. Always replace the O-rings, especially on this one. This solenoid here is actually the end plug for the valve. So the valve just drops in there, and this solenoid is the one that holds that valve. You see here it wants to come out on its own. And put our clip. And this is our torque converter clutch pulse width modulated solenoid, or TCC PWM for short. It's gray connector and gray body. Put our O-rings. Okay, so here you see the 2 O-rings. Lube it up. Install it in the bore. Put our clip in. We're almost done here. Okay, so now we're going to put our, this is the forward accumulator. We're going to install the new D-ring or leaf cut seal. And you have 3 D-rings in here. You have one for the 1-2 accumulator, one for the 3-4 accumulator, and one for the forward accumulator. The forward accumulator is smaller in size, and it has yellow marking on it. Go ahead and lube it up. You're going to lube up the bore as well. For easier installation, now we put our pin and we just push it in. Now we install this valve here, low control valve. We're going to need 3 bolts. Remember I told you about the output speed sensor bolt? These are a little longer. 2 springs, the forward accumulator and the low control valve spring. I'm going to go ahead and install them and install the cover. Eight millimeter socket. Go ahead and install our force motor or pressure control solenoid. Here's our solenoid bracket. Another bolt exactly like it. Now this one here, it has 2 notches, 2 positions, and on the H3 Hummers it goes up like this, because the pan has a cutout for where the front drive shaft goes through, but on this one it's going to go to the side. And the filter is also different on the H3 Hummer to accommodate for this connector to go up. If you use a regular filter on a Hummer, or if you put this connector up here like the Hummer goes, the filter will not sit correctly on the valve body. Okay, so there we have that. And this valve body takes 7 check bowls. We're going to go ahead and install new check bowls. Come in this little baggie here. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. This one did not fall in the bore. There we go. 5, 6, and 7. We have 1 left over. This one goes on the case. Okay. Now I'm going to put a little bit of assembly lube on it to hold them together, because whenever you're going to install it on the valve on the transmission, it's going to be upside down. So I'm going to put some assembly lube on it just to hold them in place, and then I'm going to get it closer to the camera so that you can see all the 7 locations where this check balls go. Okay, 7 check balls. And our manual valve. So here we have it. We have 7 check balls. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And remember this check ball was stuck in the separator plate. And when it's stuck in the separator plate, you're going to use a 1/4 drill bit to enlarge the hole, and then you're going to install this this little gadget here. It has a snap ring on the rear, and if it's stuck on it, I mean, you just file it flush on both sides, and sometimes you don't even have to drill the hole because the check balls are 1/4 in size, so it's already up to size. You're just going to clean up both edges and then install that. And that is this here, valve body plate ball seal. That's what it is. There's the little snap ring, and you see here's the snap ring. There's the snap ring, and those are the little inserts that you put there, that you install there. And this is actually probably a TranStar part number, but this is what it is. It's a fits all VB-101. VB-101. Okay, so there we have it. Now we're going to go ahead and drill the 2 holes that I mentioned. I'm going to go ahead and grab that drill bit. It's 96 thousandths. I have a 92 thousandths, or 332. That's 1. That's 2. And we're going to bring it up to size. This is the 3rd clutch. We're not going to do the 2nd or the 4th clutch apply. And the reason for that, we're not doing a shift kit, but we are going to do the 3rd gear and the lockup, the isolator valve. So there we have it. Make sure you blow all the debris, all the metal debris while cutting that. So there we have the valve body. Now we are going to move to assemble the pump. Okay, it's time to start working on our pump. And the first thing we're going to do, we already put the new bushing, new seal. Now we're going to install the retainer. And this retainer is for the seal won't pop out, so you won't have a front seal blowout. We're going to lubricate the pump bushing. Now we're going to install the pivot, the slide pivot. It takes a little spring first. Now we get our slide. We put a little bit of assembly lube here. install the new O-ring that goes in between here, and then we install the sealing ring or the seal. And what the O-ring does, it just creates a like a spring type action on the seal to seal the bottom of the slide. Now we go ahead and sit the slide down. And we get these two little items here. Hope it don't fall off. It's a little round piece of rubber with a Teflon little washer here or slide. And again, the rubber deal acts as a spring for the Teflon slider to create a great seal, a real good seal. And now we install our pivot pin. Get it in the bore. Actually, I compress this so I can have enough room to get it in there. Now we tap it in. And the way this works, the green Teflon washer, it actually acts as a washer or as a slide for the slide to go to the low volume and the high volume position. And then you have your pivot there. And that's the way it goes. Now this being a 06 model, it has a single spring. The early models, 04 and down, I believe it was 05 or 04 and down, has a double spring. It's a little bit stiff, so you got to be careful when you're installing it. There's a special tool for it, but I'm going to go ahead and just use my screwdriver and get it in here. Okay? So now that we got that taken care of, I use this little 4T60 reverse reaction drum as a tool. Now we're going to put our, they call this a snowflake, but it's a rotor guide that actually centers the rotor. That's why you have this little step here. And this actually centers it. So we install this rotor guide inside the rotor, on the rear of the rotor. We get one of these rings, expander rings, drop it in there, and then drop in our rotor. And now we're going to install 13 vanes, little squares. We already have one expander ring on the bottom, the rotor guide. Sometimes you find out that the converter went out and got severely hot, that rotor guide melts. All these items are available separately. These little vanes are available on their own. The guide is available on their own, and they also have a pump kit complete with the slide. Now we install the top one. Now we're going to set this to the side because we're going to go ahead and assemble the valves that go in the pump cover. That's our pump body where the pump rotor goes, and this is actually our pump cover. The pump body goes to the outside of the transmission, and the pump cover goes towards the inside of the transmission. Okay, so now we're going to install our torque converter clutch apply valve and our spring. This is a little different from the earlier models. On the earlier models, the valve looked a little different, and you had two ends that looked alike, and you had two springs, double springs. This valve changed. It now has a pocket, and the spring goes inside the pocket. I like this stuff. It works really, really good. Now we drop the TCC apply valve in the bore. normal little washer like you see on the early models. This did not change. And of course, your snap ring. Get our snap ring pliers in here. It's a very small snap ring. Get this thing in the groove. There we go. You got it in the groove. And here you have the bleed hole. It's bleeding off all the time. And the solenoid is normally open. When the solenoid energizes, it blocks the fluid flow. It strokes the valve. And you have torque converter clutch applied. Now we're going to install this screen here. Don't forget that, otherwise you're going to have most of the pressure buildup from here is going to dump out from the rotor. Now we're going to install our pressure regulator valve. A little bit of lube. You can use whatever lube you want. WD-40 works well. I don't get too technical with that. It works perfect for me, and that's what I use. Now we install our boost valve, and I don't have nothing assembly lube on the boost valve to hold it, so I'm going to use a little pressure like this. I'm going to get my snap ring on my pliers. We're going to go in sideways like this. And the pump did actually change in this year. This pump is a little different than the early model. I always like to hit the boost valve like this, just to make sure that the snap ring is not going to pop out. So here we have it. Boost valve, pressure regulator valve, spring, the TCC apply valve, and of course the bushings. You remember that? We installed these bushings. And now we're going to go ahead and install it on our pump cover. Slide it in there. Get 5 bolts. We're going to get our pump alignment tool to align it. Align both halves, otherwise you're going to have a lot of trouble trying to install it in the case on the transmission. Just make sure that your holes are aligned. Okay, there we go. We are aligned. Tighten up your band. You can use a big clamp, a hose clamp, if you have a big clamp that'll work here. That's just a screwdriver. That little impact there, it's not even an impact, it's just a screwdriver. It doesn't tighten up the bolt, so don't trust that. Just torque him. Torque all your 5 holes, 5 bolts. Okay, now we put our pump washer. Put it down with assembly lube to hold it in place. Okay, I already tried to resize these rings. I hope we don't have an issue with the new bushing. Sometimes you have to resize them a couple of times, these rings, because the pump will not slide down and you don't want to rip those rings. Only one pair comes in the kit, but you can also get them separate. You can also install 700R4 sealing rings. They're blue in color. And they're not resizable. They're the ones that they're already pre-cut. They work good. just in case you rip them, you can have some extra. And we're hoping that we don't need that. Not today. Not today, at least. So there we have it. Our pump, 4L60E pump, already assembled. 2006 model. Valve body and pump. Okay, so let's go ahead and assemble our 2-4 servo. We're going to go ahead and start with the O-rings. That's the cover O-ring. That's the separator O-ring. Now what we're going to do, we're going to install our servo pin. We put our cushion spring. That's our servo pin. Now I'm going to just put this upside down first. I'm going to take it to my foot press to install this snap ring right quick. Okay, I have the snap ring already installed. Remove that. Now here is the new servo pin spring, and this is the original one. This spring with age and time it stresses out, and when it gets hot it stays compressed and it doesn't release the pin from the band, and causes the band to drag on the drum and wears out the pump quicker, and you will have a premature failure on the 2-4 band. So we install this new one, the washer. You kind of compress the spring a little bit to get that clip on its groove, and there we have it. Sometimes you will have some servos that the pin is actually loose, and the reason for that being loose is because this spring is already compressed. So always install a new one. If it doesn't come in the kit, get it separately. It is available separately on its own. Call your part supplier, find out, get some more information, and they should be able to help you. That's what they're there for. This is all of our sealing rings. We're going to go ahead and install our sealing rings on our servo. And if you notice here, I didn't put assembly lube all the way around. I just put assembly lube on the where the two ends meet. Now this one, comes with there's 4 different types of servos. This servo here, you have the smaller one, which is the Corvette or 4x4 C71 servo, and then you have the one after that. This is a new type. It comes on the newer vehicles, and then you would have the normal one. This one, which would be the 553 servo. So before you only had this one in the Corvette servo. The Corvette servo is too firm for second gear, and sometimes you will have a third gear flare, and then you put a Corvette servo, you take care of the third gear flare, but second gear is a little bit too firm. So it is available in between the 553 and the Corvette servo. It is available through the dealership only, as far as I know, because it's a new size, it's a new servo. Overdrive piston, servo piston, and our overdrive servo piston sealing ring. There's only one size for this. Go ahead and put this on the cover. Install it like so. And here we do put a lot of assembly lube. Make it easier to go inside the case. Easier for assembly. Okay, so there we have it. 2-4 servo assembly. And this is our return spring. Don't forget that. This return spring keeps the servo, when it's not in the applied position, keeps it away from dragging on the band. 2-4 servo 4L60E. Okay, so I already put the pump assembly inside the case, put the pump gasket, and then slid my pump down, and it slid fairly easily. I don't have the pump O-ring on this, and I use this just to align my bolt holes. I already installed my turbine shaft seal, and all the pump bolts, they take O-ring. It already has all new O-rings in it. So I'm going to go ahead and put all of my pump bolts on the pump. Drive them in. Get it started a little bit. You should be able to turn it fairly easily by hand and pick it up. It has a very tight tolerance clearance. Now we're going to install, this is the early model pump O-ring, and this is the late model. The late model, you put the pump in first, then you slide this in there, and then the bell housing compresses that. But before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and torque my pump bolts real quick, and then we're going to go in. Then we install our bell housing. Now that I have my torque wrench on my hand, I just remembered that one of you guys asked me what part number was this torque wrench. I bought it from Mac Tools, TWXA 100F as in Frank and D as in David. TWXA 100FD. Works pretty good, I like it. Okay, now we put our bell housing on it. These are Torx Plus, and trust me, if you're going to do one of these and you don't have that socket, you better get one, because once you strip those bolts, they're nice and tight. You're going to have trouble getting them out. So get your Torx Plus socket. Always start your bolts, all of them, and then start tightening them up. Okay. And then you torque them to 33 pounds, the bell housing bolts. Let's go get the servo. Okay, now we're going to install our servo. The first thing we're going to do, I'll put some assembly lube on the return spring just to hold it together in place in there. And now we install our 2-4 servo assembly into the case. I'm going to go ahead and push in it. I'm going to get my hammer here and just push, and then you hold it. I don't know if I got there in your way there on the camera, but I hope you're catching everything here. And then we install our snap ring. Get your screwdriver, make sure that your snap ring is all the way in, which it is, and you should have a little slack there. So there we have it. 2-4 servo installed, and let's go ahead and apply the 2-4 servo. Here we have our blow gun. There we have it. Okay, so let's go ahead and finish this little puppy here. 4L60 2006. Remember that leftover check ball? That one goes here in the case. Now we're going to install our 3-4 accumulator pin, our 3-4 accumulator, and our 3-4 accumulator return spring. Now we're going to install the bolt that we took off to remove our low reverse. Here's it right here. Okay, now we're going to install our spacer plate and valve body gaskets. And they are marked. If you see here, the V and the B, that's valve body. And the C and the A, that's a case gasket. So the case gasket goes first. Then our spacer plate. Then our valve body gasket. And these are E4OD valve body alignment pins, and I use them as tools. So I'm going to put one here, and I'm going to put one here. Whenever you get your shift kit on the paper, these are called the Z bolts, and I don't know why they named it like that, but they're actually your alignment holes. This is going to center your spacer plate to the valve body or to the case, and all your bolt holes, the threads are going to be aligned. Here is the second clutch check ball. Remember that it was stuck in the plate, so there we have that. Now here I already pre-assembled this. I put the 2 springs in it, a new D-ring, and our 1-2 accumulator installed in the 1-2 accumulator housing. Takes one long bolt and 2 short ones. And always don't forget to tighten up this little plate here. If you do forget to tighten it up, you're not going to have any reverse. This clamps down the sealing area where the low reverse piston applies. So don't forget that. Those are 8mm bolts. I have already installed the 2 new O-rings on the wiring harness, and the new filter came also in the kit. This is for the late model, and on the early model, this is the filter, but this one actually goes on the case, not on the solenoid itself. On the 95 model only. But the new wiring harness already come with that style of filter for the solenoid. Install 2 bolts here. I'm going to remove our guide pins. I'm going to put them back on our magnet here. I'm going to set this to the side. And before we forget, I'm going to go ahead and torque the bolts. And he has memory, 9 pounds. There we go. Okay, now I need my 10mm socket. There we have it. Now we're going to install our manual valve latch. Install our valve body, 9 check balls, one in the check, the 8 check balls, 7 check balls here, and one in the case. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. You hold them with assembly loop because you're gonna do this. Now we latch our manual valve latch to our manual valve. Sit it on the case. Install our pressure switch manifold. Made in Mexico. It's a new one, by the way. We're gonna just guide our bolts. Now this one doesn't have a filler tube stop. It's a 06 model. The pan already has the indentation on it. Remember these 3 8mm bolts, longer than the rest of them. See, they're longer. Remember the position. One here, and one there. Let's go ahead and finish installing all of our 10mm bolts. I hope this video is not too long for you guys. And then another short one here. But this is what it takes to rebuild the unit. It's probably going to be more than an hour long, but it did not take me an hour. It took me more than that. And remember, the 2 guide bolts is this one and that one. V10 rotor. I always leave it ready on the neutral position. That way when I install the neutral safety switch or the manual lever precision sensor, it's already in position. We get our torque wrench. Like I say, that little screwdriver does not tighten up the bolts, it just gets them closer. Make sure that you tighten them properly, torque them properly. See, did I do this one? I think I did, yeah. Now our 8. Now we connect our wiring harness. This little tab here goes underneath the pressure switch manifold. I don't know if you can see the little cutout right there. That's where it goes. 3-2 downshift solenoid on your left. No, this is the TCC PWM solenoid on your left. 3-2 downshift solenoid on your right. Pressure switch manifold assembly. And both shift solenoids. A and B. Get this in position. Our force motor or electronic pressure control solenoid. Lube up our filter. Our pan gasket. Let's go ahead and install our extension housing. Now we're going to remove that bolt. New O-ring on the output speed sensor. Installing on our case. Let me go get the bolts. Six 15mm bolts. Torque them. £33. Actually, the impact wrench did his job there. There we have it. Now we go get the transmission pan and install the transmission pan on it. Transmission pan nice and clean, the magnet nice and clean. I like to start all of my bolts first before I tighten them up. I just blow the inside. The outside has still a little bit of water from the machine. Remember I mentioned that the valve body does not have a filler tube stop. That's what this is. This lower indentation on that transmission pan. This is the dipstick stop. If you don't install a dipstick stop on these transmissions, you're gonna underfill your transmission and it's gonna create issues. Probably gonna slip or do some other crazy things that you might misdiagnose it and think that it's gonna be something different. And all it is probably maybe like a quart low on fluid. That dipstick is pretty long and it has to stop for the correct and proper fluid level. And then you torque it. There we go. And we're going to go on the opposite end of the transmission. Right now I'll bring the camera over. We're going to go ahead and change the shift lever seal and install our digital transmission range sensor or manual lever position sensor, or how a lot of people like to call it, neutral safety switch. They call it for different names, but it's the same thing. Some are digital, some are analog. This happens to be a digital one. Analog is a voltage drop type resistor, and a digital, it's just either open, the contacts either are open or closed, or high or low. That's how the computer looks at it. Yes, I know it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to torque everything, but you can't be without it, man. You know what I'm saying? All right. So there we have it. Now let's move to the side of the transmission and put our shift lever seal and manual lever position sensor, DTR sensor, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so I have this shift lever seal removal tool. I'm gonna get it in there, and I'll get my impact. Screw it in. Get my extractor bolt. So here we have it, removed the shift lever seal. This is our new shift lever seal. Go ahead and install it with a twist in motion. This is the shift lever seal installer tool. You can get a socket that fits it if you lose it. And now we install our digital transmission range sensor. And I'm going to have to install it later because my folding fixture is in the way. Whew. Okay, so here we have our finished product. So after a lot of cup of coffee and a little bit of patience, it is a lot of work and a lot of trouble, you know, try to film these videos for you guys, but I mean, I'll do all my best to get them out there to you. And if you have any questions or anything that you would like to see, or if you would like to see any more videos like this, or for me to produce certain type of videos, diagnostic videos or whatever, just leave your comments down below. And this is 2013, so we're going to do things a little bit different. I always have a lot of work and I don't have a lot of time sometimes, but I'm going to try to dedicate a little bit of time and just answer your questions. I may do it on the weekend and then post a video answering most of you guys' questions. So I mean, feel free to give your positive comments. I mean, if you know of other fixes, that if somebody asked a question down on the comment section, and if you happen to know the answer for that question, just go ahead and give them the answer. And sometimes I cannot be on the computer and then me building transmissions all day long. So if you have the answer, just go ahead and share it with everybody. These videos are for you guys. I mean, these videos are for free. I'm not charging you anything for them. So I'm sharing my knowledge with you. Your knowledge as a technician, share it with other techs, younger techs that they want to know more about transmission repair and transmission diagnosis. And I know I keep forgetting to put my part numbers, you know, where I get my parts from, and you know, things like that. But just